Welcome back to the series. If you're here for the first time, this is a series on a real-world project built with WordPress and BuddyPress. This is the first part of a two-part mini-series where I show how I managed to dynamically display the member count during the sports-based filtering process using ES7 JavaScript and WordPress Ajax in object-oriented style. In this video, I covered the backend Ajax setup to load the data into local storage of the browser. Let's get started. Okay, so we are back at the member index or athlete index file. So today we're going to talk about an extra feature that got added, which looks pretty simple, which is let's say cheerleading with filtering, and see this text got changed, right? Now we have 2 athletes found with cheerleading, and then if we choose, let's say, football, now we found 11 of them, right? So this looks very simple and little, but when I go over the details, you'll see that it wasn't very simple, because it doesn't end here. I mean, it is every time it is getting the detail quickly from the database. At the same time, also once we reset it, we have to put it back what it originally found, the total number. And also, if we, let's say, choose ice hockey, and another way we have to handle it is like anytime anybody put it to all sports, we have to put it back. Not only that, it doesn't end here. We have to go to, let's say, if we go to advanced filters. At this point, we choose, let's say, golf. Now here we have to change it again for this golfing advanced filter section, right? And then not only that, we have, if we just hit back, right? Back to base filters, we have to put it back again. So, when you're going through the motions, it looks nothing, but as a developer, every time this changes, we have to put it back and we have to reflect the data from the database, right? So that's what we're going to explain how it was done. Okay, we're at the back end of that application. And this time, I actually divided this whole part into 2. In the first part, I'm going to show how this Ajax function that I load using this after theme setup hook and call into this PHP function, which uses WP Ajax to go contact the backend DB to collect all the athlete counts according to the sporting events and writes to the local storage. And on the next part, we're going to handle the rest of it. So let's go back to the code. Okay, to begin with, let's look at the actual Ajax JavaScript, which is located. This is my theme folder, assets, distribution, JS, and all the way down to put athlete count to local storage. So if we look at it, it's first of all, I'm just putting stuff in variable like Ajax URL, which I'm collecting from the ASM global 5.ajax URL, which is a localized variable, which I have done while setting up this JS. And to set that up, let's go find where it is done. Under functions, ASM functions, and ASM custom functions. This is what I used for this project specific PHP functions or Ajax functions to set them up. So right here, if we go down, as you can see, I have a whole bunch of them. Just to speed up the operation, I put them into local storage. So to do that, I use all these functions, and the reason this is ASM Global 5 is because this is where I'm on queuing this specific JS, put athlete count to local storage, And while doing so, I'm also localizing this variable so that in any time I can just call this ASM global 5 dot Ajax URL, and this gives me this admin ajax.php, and this is where you can see I'm attaching that JS to after setup theme hook, which is a hook that loads way earlier than the on queue hook right here. This is where the actual compiled script.min.js is loaded, and this one is loaded using this hook, WP on queue script. So they come a little bit later, and these are the ones use the click events, which is this click events, which is basically happens later than the actual loading of the data, which gets loaded right here, athlete count, these guys. And the stuff that loads the data actually does the heavy lifting of the collection of data from the database. They're being loaded using this after setup theme. And just to show you the order of the scripts, we have to go on the web. Okay, here is a quick sequence of events that WordPress loads, or sequence of hooks that kicks in while the WordPress loads, if they're coming in order, right? So this is the one I'm using to use the data to load them to the local storage. As you can see, the after setup comes way earlier than the on queue one, which is way down here. See, WP on queue scripts. So this one, after setup theme, this one which launches way early, that's the one I'm using to load. This see after theme setup to launch this guy so the actual data from the database gets loaded to the local storage and shows up in here under a variable called athlete count. So basically it gets it ready, keeps them handy, so that as soon as the other guy calls it in, it's very quick. It doesn't spend any time to call into the database and collect the data, because that would take a long time. And this is how I'm getting the Ajax URL, and this is where I'm mentioning the actual get athlete count by sports PHP Ajax file. And initially what it does, it goes ahead and first looks into the local storage. The athlete count looks for this data right here, athlete count, because in case it is already there, because it's gonna go check every time it refreshes, it is gonna launch, right? So first time it's not gonna be there, so it's gonna go ahead and it's not gonna find it. So if it doesn't find it, then I say, oh, if you don't find it, then make that Ajax call. So it makes that Ajax call, calls in as an action, sends this Ajax function, which is get athlete count by sports, and launches that. And once that function is launched, that function, let's go find that function under function ASM function Ajax. Let's go find it here. Get athlete count by sports. So once this data is not found, Ajax calls this function. And what this guy does, initially I'm just declaring a whole bunch of variables according to sports event, and I'm creating an array, arguments, where I'm sending this role, athlete role, and then I'm making that query. So pretty much this query is gonna go out there, find all the users it can find, because this is a user query, as you can see. This is not WP query, this is a WP user query. So depending on this role, this query goes in and tries to find the sporting event associated with that user, and then take that sporting event and sends into this switch case function. So let's say if it finds, as soon as finds like somebody using basketball, so it's gonna go ahead and add one to this account. The next one is gonna be 2, next one is gonna be 3, something like that. So in the end, it goes ahead and fills up these variables according to athlete count, and later I push those athlete count variables into this create this array object, and adds that array sports count here. See this one? So it fills it in, creates this huge array, and eventually I use this WP send JSON function and throw in that variable. So what this function does, this turns this array into a JSON object, then returns to this JavaScript as response or result or whatever. So then I put that result or JSON file into this athlete count data variable, and eventually write it to the local storage using this variable athlete count, and that's where this data is from. So now it says sitting there in the local storage, it's ready to go. It just goes out there, collects this info, and sends it there. So that's how the backend stuff is set up, just like this diagram shows. The Ajax JavaScript PHP function goes to the DB, writes to the local storage as JSON. So this concludes the first part, and the next we're going to show how these functionalities are taking place.